And they getting married?
I guess so.
Wow. Is she pretty?
Have you met anyone famous?
Not really. I was on, you know, the lead singer for Counting Crows, that band from the 90s. I was on the same flight with him once.
My restaurant was right next door to a cinematography area for adult films.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of stars coming to our restaurant.
Stars. Okay, so same drill here. 7 to 8 minutes. I'll have a clock going. You can run your own clocks. Have signals from the whoever you gotta use to get through things. You can do exactly like Chris is doing. Have a next slide woman or a next slide man. How you use your audio visuals is up to you. It's all about creativity and whatnot. And with that, I'm ready when you are. Chris,
All right.
You ready?
So I want to start with a question. Who remembers 9/11? Like, actually vividly, who's old enough to remember it and has that memory? Okay. Who remembers the aftermath of 9/11 and the sort of national sentiment? The general theme was we have to do something, right? We're in danger, we're threatened, we've been attacked. We have to act, we have to respond. So I want you to keep that sentiment in mind. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about history, the sociocultural, and the political influences on FDR's decision to sign Executive Order 9066 in February of 1942, not 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. That was the executive order that allowed federal forces to intern over 100,000 Japanese Americans. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore who FDR was, where did he come from, what were the influences that made him who he was. We're going to explore the political, what was the impact of Pearl Harbor, if we could possibly hope to capture that, about FDR's politics up until that point. And then we're going to explore the decision itself. And I think what you'll join me in finding is that this decision, though it was made under a titanic influence of social prejudice, of concerns over national security, it was the wrong one, and it's been disastrous for the country. So that dapper young fellow is FDR. He was born in Hyde Park, New York in 1882. He went to prep schools. He he lived the life of a young man from a wealthy family. He traveled all over the world. He was actually arrested in Germany 4 times in one day, which perhaps helps explain his ill sentiments toward German Americans, at least, I suppose. And he went to Harvard. He graduated Harvard in 3 years, 1903. He got his history degree from Harvard, and he went on to Columbia Law School, where he studied for a while, but then he just passed the bar on his own and decided he didn't need law school anymore, so he moved on. In 1910, this 28-year-old man assumed his seat in the New York State Senate and never looked back from his political career. While traveling in 1921 again, I suppose there's a theme here, bad things happen when FDR traveled, he contracted polio, and that would leave him confined to a wheelchair for all of his time as president, certainly, and even before that. He took office in 1933. The country was in the midst of the Great Depression, the greatest depression of the world that had ever seen. And what he did was he enacted New Deal policies that reminded people of the Roosevelt legacy, of the legacy of Teddy Roosevelt, and focused on the poorest and those in society with the least opportunities. Lots of those folks in this era were folks of ethnic minorities. Speaking of legacy with Teddy Roosevelt, FDR's 5th cousin, as a matter of fact, there's an interesting parallel in the discussion of Japanese internment, and that's that Teddy Roosevelt once worked with the Japanese to come to a series of gentlemen's agreements in which all Japanese migration to the United States was cut off. And so there was that legacy that followed FDR around, certainly, both the legacy of Teddy's dealings with the Japanese and with his entire political career. He gave a speech, his January 1941 State of the Union address, where he addressed 4 freedoms. So those those four freedoms, they came to define his stance on natural unalienable rights: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And that leads us to December, when the nation was attacked, and there was overwhelming sentiment, a need for response, anger, prejudice, fear. All of those things running rampant in this country. And so FDR was faced with a decision. He had many top advisors who were telling him that the news and media reports of Japanese Americans being complicit in the attacks on Pearl Harbor were true, and that those same elements were present in California and all along the west coast of the country. And he had really all the way up through the ranks of his advisors, many telling him that there's a national security need. And to meet the needs of the country that was now demonstrated to be vulnerable, the Japanese Americans had to be dealt with. And so in February of 1942, he signed this executive order, 1966. And you know, I can't possibly encapsulate the impact that this action had. What I can tell you is that the research I've done, I believe it to be a disastrous one. I believe that the theme of race relations in this country have been formed by this decision. It wasn't just a reflection on society at the time. It helped form this country's struggle with race relations through the rest of our history. You did the sign thing. That's FDR. Just fun fact.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's FDR. Yeah, no, at two, apparently this is pretty common in
Yeah.
like wealthy, and particularly wealthy Dutch families.
Yeah.
Really?
At 2 years old, that's just how your standard 2-year-old boy looked, I guess.
Is he supposed to look like a girl or just wearing
I
clothes?
don't know. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
know. You know, do the research and
Everyone
multiple
looks
questions,
good.
but that's FDR. See the resemblance? Should I take the questions or?
No. What do we got? Any feedback for Chris right now?
I liked you had good slides, I'll admit.
You had a
They
good
were-
hook, too.
Yeah, good hook, good slide. I agree with both of those. That hook, that opening salvo, that's important for these kind of deals. It gets us to sit up and pay attention and follow where you're going. What about the depth and breadth of the argument? Main point was clear, no doubt about that. 5:40 on the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow,
You
that
must
was a
have,
lot.
yeah, you went fast. I think faster than you were just planning on. Well laid out. Kind of like examples, evidence that it is that connection that you made. Maybe that's where some depth could have come back into it. Because in 1988, Reagan formally apologized, right, for the internment, and I even paid reparations to all surviving people who were interred, like $20,000 a head. Yeah. So I mean, so the wrongness of it is clear. The background that I really liked where you went, which maybe could have teased it out more to add that extra minute and a half, is that Roosevelt legacy. That was interesting right there to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to prove causality when you're a fifth cousin. I don't even know who my
Yeah.
fifth cousins are,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still, that is an interesting path to go down. So what made him do what he kind of knew was wrong? That point that you made, the need for a response, right? That's the burden of leadership, to not respond when everybody around you is telling you, Stimson's making you believe that the spies were behind Pearl Harbor, that we got to just lock them all up, right? The need for a response. When Trump's our president, what's his response? Keep all the Muslims out, right? There's also a constitution that guides us through our decision making that he chose to ignore, right? And that need for a response, which I love the way you set that up. That's the danger, right? Out of that we fight the need to respond. The need to respond and be afraid is normal. What the harder thing is the decision not to respond, I suppose.
Yeah, I had more. I wish I had better.
You got me thinking about a lot of stuff, so in that way, in your presentation about it, Chris is a very good speaker, everybody I think would agree. He's got this persona that he's nailed down over his 4 years at the Air Force Academy that's gonna serve you well in the future, but, man, I think a little bit more depth, I suppose, would be my feedback. The slides were good though, and the hook was good, yeah.
That clock reading skill. Right now.
I mean, I guess I'll check the video. I had 5:30.
Oh,